everybody, my name is Cheri. Welcome to my stamp studio. We're almost to July. How can that happen? It feels like summer's just started and now we're already almost to a new month. So I wanted to give, just tell you real quick, this is going to be a longer technique video because this technique takes a long time, and I'll fast forward lots of parts of the video, but there are still several steps to it. If you follow my channel, you know that I like the art of stamping and not just all the time making quick cards or just coming up with different layouts. I enjoy that. But what I really love is when you can sit down and just create something beautiful. So it may take a little bit of time, but I find joy in that. So if you're one of those stampers, this will be right up your alley. It's also a card that doesn't require any kind of die cutting system. So I know sometimes when you're new, the supplies that this takes are really pretty minimal. In fact, it's a lot of the supplies I have allergies that I had when I started stamping 27 years ago. So it's just a fun way to spend some of your time relaxing. So for July, let's think. First, there is a designer series paper sale. So a selection of our papers will be 15% off in July, and I'll have all the information on my website. So after I do a couple of these cards, then I will do a few of them, 4 or 5 at least, that use our designer series paper in a unique way. So that's first. My July class that has opened first is with the peaches. So this isn't a card that will make you can see this card on my channel, but I just wanted to remind myself to tell you that registration has opened for that. It's the only class that I have open right now. And then in July, I will be doing a drawing for a full set of our Stampin' Right markers. So if you purchase from me during July and you purchase more than $50, you'll go into the drawing for that. And in July, I will be mailing out our holiday catalogs. It's known as the July to December now, but I'm going to keep calling it the holiday catalog because that's too many words. So I will be mailing those out to everybody who has spent $50 with me since April of this year. So if you don't know, you can email and ask, and I'll let you know if you're going to be on the list. So that's coming out, and obviously when I get my catalogs, I will also get some new stuff. So I won't get everything because I'm not in a Christmas kind of mood yet. I might get one Christmas thing, but there's a lot of stuff in there that's still year-round or fall. I can kind of ooze myself. It's really hard for me this time of year to stamp a season ahead because I love summer. I don't want it to leave. I want it to stay. So I will have paper things and holiday catalog sneak peeks. Both of those will be kind of what I feature. After the peach class closes, registration, then I will have the succulents. I Can Never Bloom Where You're Planted is the paper. I'll have that. So for today I'm gonna use the Daisy Garden. This is not my stamp set. You all think I own everything. This is actually my daughter's, who owns hardly anything. So she had this and I asked to borrow it, and when she brought it, she said, "So did you like my video?" And I said I didn't see it because she posted a video the day before. I will put her link up because our cards are completely different. But I knew that this would work really well with the technique I wanted to do. And so her card is super cute. So you'll have 2 total different variations of cards. So her link for her video will be down underneath mine. Or if you're on Facebook, you can go to the comments below and I'll post hers. So to do this, you're going to need a Stamparatus. So you can do it other ways and not have a Stamparatus, but this really makes it the easiest. So I'm going to show you how I set it up because it doesn't take very long. You've got the one stamp, so I just laid it on there, stuck it to my board, and I started with that. Then if you have the grid paper that goes in the Stamparatus, it just fits right in there, so you don't need to tape anything down. And then this is a half a sheet of our watercolor cardstock. You can't make it work with normal, no way, Jose. You can kind of do it with shimmer. You'd have to stop a couple of steps before because you can put so much water on this and it is fine. So you really do want this, and it's fun because there's a lot of different things you can do. So I laid mine on here, and you just kind of lay it first and kind of guess where your stamps are going to be. And this is a background stamp. So it fills up the whole thing. So we're going to trim. So I just kept laying it like this till I kind of got it. Now, then when I knew where it was, in case you want to do this again, just kind of mark your corners if you're going to make 2 of them. But that would only be 2 in one sitting because this would have to be on exactly the right spot. Then you can kind of put this here, and background stamps are hard to put the magnet on. So you can see we have just about everything. That's going to go off a tad, but some of it's going to get cut anyway, so something's going to go. So we got that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a light color. You can do any light color. With any of these, you can use a different color. So I have Sahara Sand because that's a nice light color. And I'm going to ink this with the Sahara sand. Yes, you can use ink spots. I know somebody is going to helpfully tell me I don't have ink spots in all the colors and they have to be refilled all the time. And this works just fine, especially for this base coat. And I don't have anything to help me press because sometimes I feel like I don't get very much exercise if I can't get to my pool. So I might as well at least get some exercise by pushing on this, right? But you can't get tools if you have arthritis or something and you have a hard time pushing on this. You can even make them, or use an old brayer. If you have one of our brayers, you can roll that over there. But the nice thing about the Stamparatus is, see if you missed this part. I intentionally missed it. I'm going to show you 2 tips. So maybe I didn't ink it well enough. So sometimes this gives. So here's tip 1. Told you there's going to be lots of tips in this video. So put that there. That way when you ink, that doesn't move. So now I know that I'm getting a stronger coverage of ink. Tip 2 is just get out of your chair, because it just takes a bit more pressure than what you can do if you're sitting down. If you're sitting down, you're kind of poking like that. So if you stand up, you only have to stand up for a second. I often stand up when I create. I have this area and then I have a overlook that overlooks our, I don't know which stack I got that out of, my office into our great room. So I often stand there and then look, it's so much better. So this paper has bumpies in it. So sometimes if it hits a bumpy, it's not going to stamp perfectly. That's the nature of watercolor cardstock. Now you're going to need our water painters. You do get one water painter in my peach class if you do the full kit thing. And then you're going to need whatever colors of stamp pads. I'll tell you the colors I'm using, but don't think that you have to just use those colors. So I'm going to start with pear, and I'm going to use my largest tipped watercolor brush for this. So squeeze your pads together. I'm just going to show you on this one, and then all the squeezing is going to get edited out. Otherwise, I'll waste a bunch of time. So this one, you can see, the first time I used it, I added some refill because the pear wasn't strong enough. But then it just has this nice little palette. So when you have the water painters, it says push. So when you push, nothing happens. It's when you let up, the water comes out. So push and let up. You don't want a ton of water in here. And I have a little tissue over here in case they're super wet. What's wrong, Bubby? My cat's bringing me his toy. It happens every morning. It's really early here today. But most of you know my father was in the hospital and now he's still needs help. So last week, 3 of my 5 work days were spent either with my father or with my mother. They're no longer married because she had surgery. So I spent a whole day with her as well. So I'm a little bit behind and I apologize. Yesterday I did answer emails for about 3 hours. So I was really behind on that. But if you send a sweet email, thank you. But I might not have time to just respond right now. Hopefully my life will get back to normal soon. This week we did come up with a schedule. So my day tomorrow is Tuesday, and hopefully that will be the only day. There are 5 of us, so there's 5 days and 5 kids. So you can see what I'm doing is I am going outside the lines because I'm going to stop after this one. So I'm putting the green on the leaves and I'm going just a bit outside the lines. Like I'm not intentionally smudging it, but as far as this wide brush goes, that's where I'm going. So I'll finish the leaves and then I'll show you the next one. Okay, so you can see all of the leaves just have a splash of green over the top. It's pear. Then I just have a tissue here. I find this is the easiest way to go from color to color with the water painters is I just drip some water out and then take it off on the tissue. Now I'm going to go to crushed curry. Again, any color. Your flowers don't have to be yellow. You could do purple or you could do pink or you could do blues. You could do whatever colors you want. I just went with crushed curry. And again, because I needed so much of this, when I made my other card, I added refill. You want to be careful when you do the refill that you make sure you're getting a bunch of water in there. And I used it all up on the pear. Otherwise, it's going to be really, really dark. So now I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm just going to paint over the top of the flowers. Go a little bit outside the lines, get the whole flower in there. but you're really just giving this a nice base of color to give it a more watercolor look when we're finished. So we're just going over this. And crushed curry to me always looks like it's going to be a little bit darker, and when you have full strength it is, but when you water it down a little bit it's not. So I'll finish these yellows and then I'll show you the next color. So now I have the balmy blue and I'm going to fill in all the rest of the card. And this is going to give us a fun sky background, and it can be pretty light, so I'm going to add quite a bit of water right there. And then just fill all this in. So super easy. It will, excuse me, I didn't realize my throat was this scratchy because I've hardly talked today. It doesn't matter, you know, if it hits the yellow, it might be a little bit green. If it hits the green, it might go a little bit darker green. But we're gonna have so many layers of color on here in a minute that it doesn't matter. So just fill in all this. And I'll finish doing this and then I'll come back. Get this off of here. So done with the balmy blue. Now it needs to be dry. So when I made the first card, I just went over to my stamp thing and I was picking out the next set of colors, and it just kind of dried on its own. For the sake of time, I'm going to heat set this, or just heat dry it. And I did do it, I just finished it off to make sure it was dry because it needs to be dry. So you leave it in here, and if you have the new heat tool, well, it's not new anymore. It's been a few years. Just turn it on the low, because then it doesn't get super hot, but we'll make sure all of this is dry. Okay, it's dry, and one of the ways you can tell that it's dry is your paper curls. It's really important to have this magnet on here because everything kind of moves just a little bit. The plate doesn't even get hot though if you use that low setting. And then I took my chamois and I just wiped it over this, so now this is nice and clean. So for this next step, we are going to take a Versamark. Now, depending on how clean you get this, might depend if you're like me and you have a selection of I probably have 12 Versamarks in various shades from black to white. They should be white. This one has been used. But you know, after you've had a Versamark for a while, it turns black. If yours is black, you don't really have to wash this off. But for this, you do need to make sure. That's why I went with one of my white ones. I knew it was nice and inked. And you can buy a re-inker. I just like that. I like new ones. So just get this nice and inked, because you're not going to be able to see if you get everything on this. And you obviously want to make sure that everything on this one is inked. So we have that. So just make sure everything's nice and flat in here. And then pop this back on. And again, remember, we're going to stand up and we're going to push. And this time I'm going to go in each quarter, push there, there. Even if you have a rolly thing on a stamp this big, you have to make sure that you get everything. So it's all stamped. Now our new embossing powders come in sets. This is fabulous because sometimes you run out of one and you have extras. So when you get an extra, you'll be like, oh. And at Winter Retreat, we use the heck out of the clear embossing powder. Sometimes you just use a lot, and then you're going to be forced to use the other one. So this is clear, white, and black. And then the other one is copper, gold, and silver. I really wanted to do the copper, but this takes a while, and I knew the black would look stunning on camera. I think the copper would look pretty up close, but I'm not quite sure the camera would catch it. And a lot of times the choices I make are based on how I think it might look on camera. Like this card would be really pretty in a bunch of pinks, but you'd have to start pretty pale, and I wasn't sure that that would show up. The black kind of gives me a fall feel, even though they're daisies. I always think of yellow flowers and sunflowers in fall. So I am using all of this. Just like that. I want to make sure that everything is covered, but everything that doesn't stick is going to go right back in there. See, even this isn't remotely hot. So we're done with the Stamparatus for now. So we've got this, and you can see I did press nice and hard, so I even got the edge of my stamp. We'll just knock this off. Most of this is going to be cut off, I know, because I can see my other sample, that none of the bottoms of my stems are in there, so I don't really need to worry about it. So get this off. Give it a couple of good wax, and I'm gonna put this back in here and then I'll heat set that. Okay, you can see that it all went back in. So we're almost full again. Now I'm gonna heat set this. A couple of tips, don't be a waver. You should never wave when you heat set your embossing ever. But because it's the embossing paper, it is going to take it a bit longer. The black's really easy to see. So I'm just gonna do a little section here. What I mean by don't waving is hold it right here until you can see it go from that dull embossing powder to shiny. And the embossing gun takes a second to heat up, and then the watercolor cardstock takes a second longer because it's so thick. So see, nice and shiny. Now if you're waving like this, you're not going to know which parts are. So once that's melted, then just move on to another. So I'm going to heat set this and then I'll be back. You don't need to see all this. I'll let you see one more flower. So see how that goes. And now you can see the divots in the paper. The places where there's little holes, it just adds to the watercolor feel of this card. Don't worry about it. You're not going to get a perfect image when you emboss on watercolor paper. Okay, this is done. And it's really important you give it one last little look in light and kind of move it around, because obviously once we put some more water on this, if any of this is still powder, it's going to wipe back off. The other thing that's really important is the reason that we don't wave and we move it from section to section is because if there's any tiny little bit, you're not going to see it. And there's a tendency, like if you wave, like this first one, if I kept waving, instead of being beautiful and raised up like this, it's going to become flat and dull because you're going to overheat it, and you don't want flat and dull. But for this, we really like that embossing to be in there because it's going to help hold some of our next steps of water in place in those little grooves. So now we are going to move on. I have Bumblebee. Again, what you want to do now is go from darker shades to, the lighter shades to the darker shades. So I'm going to start with Bumblebee. I have moved to the medium, the small tip. The other one wasn't the large tip. It was the medium. This is the small. So get some Bumblebee in here. And now this time you don't have to be perfectly careful, but you are going to stay in the lines. So no more going outside the lines. We've let that first coat be the one that goes outside. So we're just going to add some Bumblebee to all of those. So I'll finish doing that. Now I've got Mango Melody. So again, just going to add, and look, you can see how that gives that lovely definition of, now you've got color. And even if you don't know how to watercolor, all we've done is started with a big base of light, drawn out to almost the tips with a color that was a little bit darker. And now the darkest color, I'm not going to go all the way out at all. So there's like 3 levels of color. And see how pretty that is? Just add that right on there. Now I have Polished Pink, and this will be our centers. And obviously it turns a little bit orange because of all of the yellow underneath. So now I've done the whole circle of the polished pinks. Now I'm going to get a little bit more of the stronger ink. And I'm just going to dab it in there, because it's harder on these tiny ones when you don't have much space. And we've got all this color for there to be a little bit of variation of color. And now I've got Poppy. So again, I'm not going to do the whole center. I'm going to let some of that polished pink stay there on its own and not cover it up. And I will take close-up pictures of this and put them on my website so you can kind of see it, because I know sometimes it's hard to see in the video. And also, if you don't know, when I do my YouTube videos, almost every single YouTube video that's not a private class has a fast forward version on Instagram, and on those you'll see the entire color process, not just me doing this, because I'm able to take out all of my talking and a lot of the steps so you can see all of the color. So now this time it's important that I kind of get this red out of here. So again, see, you can just run that out till you can see now it's no longer dripping red, and then just wipe that off with a tissue. So now we're going to do the leaves. So I'm going to go to Just Jade, And we have that pear base. So I don't want to cover up the whole pear base, but I do want it to have some watercolor to it. So again, make sure this is nice and wet because these are a larger area and less of the lines that we're working with, because you don't want to lose all of the pear that you put in there. So do your leaves. Okay, now I've got shaded spruce, and this is a dark color. So again, you want to make sure that you're working with water and not just straight color. I'm going to add this to like the left-hand sides of my leaves. So at this time, this is the only one where I have more of a little bit of a goal. But because there's a lot of water in my brush, it may go over more, but it's just going to add to the watercolor effect. And this time I'm kind of pooling the water up and letting it stay in there. It's also great for any of the leaves where there's a little bit too much yellow. So on those, I will color the whole thing wherever there's the yellow. So I'm going to do this. Okay, it's important on that spruce that you get all of your ink out. Now I'm going to go back to my balmy blue. So this is the first color that we used, and this is really the most fun part of this card, I think. And this is why you want your embossing to be nice and raised up. So get a lot of balmy blue. And then you are going to take and get some water. And then not so much paint as kind of drop some water in. And this time it will go back in because the first time we did it, there wasn't any embossing. So this time the embossing will kind of stop it from going onto your design. And you don't want everywhere because again, we want those variations of color. But just kind of drop some in there, and you can see this is a big drop right here. If I can move my hand so you can see it. And just kind of take that water and move it around. Just like that. And I'm just letting it pool there because in a second we're going to use the heat tool again. Obviously you have to have one if you've gotten this far in this card. And the heat will kind of move it around. But again, it will stop in the places where the embossing powder lifts it up. I'm going to let that pool for just a second. Now I'm going to take a real red Stampin' Right marker. And remember, I'm giving away a set in a drawing in July. And this time I'm just going to add some dots of that real red. You get a little bit darker color if you actually color, which we don't want dark color because we're going for the watercolor, but this will just give me some concentrated red to work with. And you have to kind of push a little bit to get down in those grooves onto the actual paper. Otherwise, you're only coloring your embossing, and when we do the next step, it's going to take it off. So now I'm going to take my brush, and I am going to just squeeze drops of color. So wherever they land is where they land. I like some to be on my flowers, some to be on my leaves, and some to be on the background. And this is another step where you can just let nature take its drying time, or if you're impatient, or if you're filming a video, you can use your heat tool. So I'm going to show you because it kind of moves it around. It's super fun to do. So again, the low setting. And see, it just kind of moves it around and it dries it. And when it does that, it kind of pushes the ink in the water. Let me get one of these darker ones up here so you can see what I mean. And because it's the low setting, it's okay to do on your table. It's not going to strip the paint. But don't do this on the high setting because it's not good for your furniture. So see how it's giving those water splotches up here? Doesn't have to be dry for anything else. Now at this step, we are going to go back and kind of fix anything that might need fixing. Like right here, I have totally missed putting any sky. So just grab your balmy blue. Or you can just hope that it looks like sun. And actually, I think my ribbon might go through that. I'm just going to add a tiny bit of the blue into there. And it has to be pretty strong to cover up where that yellow is. So just kind of put that back in here. And then I'll just use up the rest of this to add some darker blues wherever I feel like it. Because there's no sense in wasting that ink that I have on my brush now. And it kind of just gives it goes back over where we've done it. Now you can see why you couldn't do this with basic cardstock, basic white. You would have lost the texture of your paper, would have started pilling about 4 steps ago. But the watercolor, I could keep going all afternoon and just layer and layer and layer. And sometimes if you're not feeling well, or you're just trying to get your mind off of things, doing something like this, you just get lost in it. At least I do. So now, in some of the places where I dropped it, I lost a little bit of the pink and the red, but that's okay because we just go back and add it. So I'm going to start with the red because that's the fastest, and that might be all I need. I might not need to add any of the pinks. And it just kind of brightens that back up. And now I'm going to take my Mango Melody marker and do the same thing with my yellows. Any place where it kind of lost it because of, and if you don't have the markers, that's okay. Just go back and do those colors with the inks. The great thing about this card is you can really make it work with whatever colors you have, because you just go from lighter to dark. They don't even have to be in the same color family. They can be retired. So I'm just adding that back in there. You want to be careful that you don't color everything and just color up all the fun highlighting you did. But this is just giving us such a nice depth of colors. So hopefully you can see that. It's got that shine. There's still a little bit of water up here. I'm going to take my tissue, get that off, which means that we just lost that. So I am going to add a tad bit of pink. And see, these, I could just play with this forever. It was really hard to stop. The day I did it, I only stopped because I had to leave the house. Because I could just keep going and going because it's so much fun. Add a little bit of pink since I have it on the brush. And it really is just giving us one more layer of color because now this pink is darker pink than the one that we've already put on the card. Let's squidge some of those in there. I'm going to make myself be done or this will be a never-ending video. So now we've got our card. So obviously background size, you can't do a whole lot with layering it onto a card. It would make a beautiful framed piece if you want to give somebody, because I mean, it's watercolor. It's like you just made a painting. So I took it over to my cupboard to where I keep all of my cardstock. And then I just pulled out some of the colors that are in it. So here it is if you mount it on the balmy blue. So it kind of gives it more of that sky feel. And again, remember, not much of the card's going to show. For the more of your card base to show, you're going to have to cut down more of this because we're going to have to lose some of it. That's why I knew the bottom was okay. Here's the pear. This was probably my second choice because we've lost, a lot of our pear is just kind of an accent color because it went way underneath there. And then here was the crushed curry. I didn't like that one at all. That just clashed with everything, which is funny because it's one of the focal colors of our card, but it doesn't work. So then I just went with my basic all the time color choice, one of my favorite colors. I like to work with those. But look at the black just kind of pulls those flowers out. But this is a half a sheet of black folded into a card, so you can see how much we're going to have to lose. So just take your paper cutter, and then this is a great time if you have made any of these things where we have all that extra embossing powder. That's now gone. And then just lay it on here. So I'm gonna have to lose a little bit of the top, not much, because I really like the top. I'd rather lose more leaves actually. Let's do this first, because I like the way that the water went up there. This is why you do the whole thing and then decide later what you want to lose. It can be a little heartbreaking. So now we've got that. So now we have to lose some of the edges. And I do like this edge, but we can't be off center with our flowers. And you can get almost all the flowers on, just not quite. Let's see if we got it. It really needs a fraction more. See what I mean? You're hardly seeing the card base anyway, so don't let it fret you if you don't have the exact color that you think you want. And we don't sell this trimmer anymore. Every time I use it, somebody asks me where I got the cute little trimmer. So see, now it just fits perfect. That black is just enough to set it off. It really looks more like a matte than the card. So then I took ribbon that is Old Olive and Pretty Peacock, which we don't even have that color anymore, but we do have the ribbon. And if you notice, no Old Olive, no Pretty Peacock in this card, but it's a green, and I thought it looked really pretty. Both color sides look really pretty. In fact, this time I'm going to do this one because the other time I did the olive. So because it's a double-sided ribbon, you have to be careful when you tie your bow right here, because you don't want one to be peacock and one to be olive. So as you push this through, you're going to have to grab it, and before you tighten it, then you're going to flip it. So see, I flipped it. So now we have the peacock showing, or the pear, whichever side you want to go for. I almost put that black sparkle ribbon on that we have that has the black with the glitter in it, and it looked really pretty, but I was just trying to stay so far away from the fall, because you're going to get a dose of fall when I get my holiday catalog things, and I thought this looked a bit more summery. So now you can see it's mostly peacock. And then I'm going to cut just enough to wrap around the card. Now you are going to need a stronger glue for this, because if you use just seal or an old snail or something, it is going to tear, because unless you wait for it to dry all the way, then it might not. So I'm going to see where I want this. I'm going to go right here. And then I'm just going to add just a tiny bit here on the edges to kind of guide it before I flip it over. So that one there. This way you can make sure that both the panels have the same color on them. And I'm going to add some here. And because this has curled and because it's a thick cardstock, that's why the Seal Plus is really good for this. So I'm going to put it all along the edges to pull that curl back down from all the water. But you have to remember, with Seal Plus, you don't get a second shot. When it's on, it's on. So if it's a little bit, I have a little bit more black at the top than I do at the bottom, but that's okay. Nobody's going to notice. So got that. Now there's two more things we want to do. First, I want to have it have a little bit of a water feel, because we have all that watercolor going on. So I'm going to take our clear epoxy gems, and I'm going to use the little raindrops, and I'm going to add 7 of them. So this has, when you have a card that had this much work go into it, feel free to embellish the heck out of it, because my hands are dirty. I do my Facebook Live this afternoon with my girlfriend, so I haven't showered yet, because this is going to download while I'm in the shower. So my dirty hands can become clean. Now my daughter's card that she made with this set takes a fraction of this time. Two totally different looks that you can get with the one single stamp set. You could add a little tag here of words if you wanted. I just kind of liked it just being its own thing. So what am I up to now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, one more. 7. And they really do give it that water feel. In fact, you could use some of the splotchy ones. It doesn't have to be the raindrop. It could be any of them. And then you may have noticed that I have these little flecks of embossing powder. My first card, I didn't really get too many of them, just a couple. But in case you have a bunch, because if your card was wet, or if, there's a lot of reasons that we end up with the embossing flecks. But this one, it's going to mainly be because the card is wet, and so it might just grab somewhere. So we're just going to do our little flicky with I don't have a bone folder sitting here because I didn't use it on this card. I'd already folded. Now see, there was embossing flecks, and now we have blend, and you don't know which of the two it is. And it also kind of gives it a little bit more of that arty feel. So you don't have to get where you had the embossing, because once you've done this, you're not going to know anymore what was embossing left over and what was where you hit it with your blend. So there we go. I could make these cards all day long. And if I had time to make these cards all day long, it would be a thank you card to my customers. Somebody will get these because I do send the cards I make out to as thank you gifts. And here's how I do it. I put them all in envelopes. And I don't know who gets what because I can't. So I just stick them all in there so you can't request because that's not how I do it. But here they are. Aren't those beautiful? So pretty. They're all going to look the same but different. You can see how because obviously you have no control over the water and where it's going. So there you go. I hope that if you enjoy the art of stamping that you found this super fun and that you'll try it yourself. It really doesn't take a whole lot of supplies. Any ink colors that you have, a Versamark, some embossing powder, the Stamparatus, and the stamp set, and a water painter. You don't even need 3 of them, but they come in a set of 3. Everybody have a great day, and I will catch you back here later. Bye.